When he was very old, the Bible says that David was kept warm by the most beautiful young virgin in the kingdom of Israel at that time. Her name was Abishag. However, there is something mysterious about the nature of the relationship between David and Abishag. This is because the biblical text informs us that David and Abishag did not have relations. But after David's death, Abishag's name was involved in the plot that resulted in Solomon's order to kill his half-brother Adonijah, who desired to marry the young woman. This has led scholars to debate what exactly was Abishag's role as David's companion. Was she a kind of nurse or caretaker for the aging king? Or was she a concubine or secondary wife, who for some reason did not have consummated relations with David? Moreover, some people still think that Abishag might have been the beloved woman of Solomon mentioned in the Song of Solomon, and therefore David's heir considered his half-brother's love for her intolerable. So in this video, we will understand everything the Bible says about who Abishag was. Abishag was a young Shunammite who took care of King David in his old age. The story of Abishag is recorded in the first chapter of the first book of Kings in the Old Testament. The meaning of the name Abishag is uncertain, but some scholars suggest that it might mean something like, "My father is a wanderer." Although the Bible does not provide much information about who Abishag was, this young woman appears involved in the context of Adonijah's death, one of King David's sons. Abishag is described in the Bible as a young virgin from Shunem. The city of Shunem was about 16 miles southwest of the Sea of Galilee, near Mount Gilboa, in the territory of the tribe of Issachar. Due to the fact that the letters L and N apparently were swapped in some ancient materials, some commentators note that the designations Shunammite and Shulamite might be equivalent in the biblical text. If this is correct, then both terms indicate a woman from Shunem. For those who have read the Song of Solomon, you might now be able to imagine where this discussion is heading. This is because, based on this possibility of Shunammite and Shulamite being equivalent terms, a few scholars suggest that Abishag might have been the Shulamite woman poetically mentioned in the Song of Solomon. However, there is no evidence of this, and most interpreters consider this hypothesis highly unlikely. So, the idea that Solomon fell in love with Abishag and that she was the anonymous and mysterious wife mentioned in the biblical book of the Song of Solomon is nothing more than pure speculation without any evidence. Now, returning to what we are certain of, the biblical text also says that Abishag was a very beautiful woman. The Bible informs us that at the end of King David's life, he had great difficulty staying warm. His servants wrapped him in many clothes, but he still did not warm up. Then, David's servants sent out a search throughout the kingdom of Israel for a young maiden to stand before the king. This young woman had to take care of David and warm him in her arms, as recorded in 1 Kings 1:2. The young virgin found was precisely Abishag, and she took care of King David and served him. Abishag was even present when the queen mother Bathsheba reminded David about the oath made that Solomon would be his successor on the throne of Israel in 1 Kings 1:15. But in 1 Kings 2:17, the Bible says that after David's death, Adonijah, who was also the king's son, spoke with Bathsheba to intercede with Solomon so that Abishag would be given to him as a wife. The context of Adonijah's request was very turbulent. This is because, shortly before, there was a great conspiracy to make Adonijah David's successor. But when Solomon was officially anointed king in place of David, Adonijah asked for clemency, fearing for his life, and Solomon let his half-brother live. However, later Adonijah decided to make the request for Abishag, and evidently, King Solomon interpreted this request as a scheme by Adonijah to take the throne of Israel. At that time in the ancient Near East, taking as a wife a woman who had belonged to a king's harem implied a claim to the throne. Therefore, Solomon understood that Adonijah was directly challenging his authority as king of Israel by desiring to possess Abishag. So, he immediately ordered that Adonijah be killed. The way Solomon reacted to Adonijah's request to marry Abishag has led scholars to discuss the true position of Abishag alongside King David. Some argue that Abishag was a concubine or secondary wife of David. Others defend that Abishag was merely David's companion, in the sense that she was the person in charge of taking care of the king in his last days, without this meaning that she became David's wife. Indeed, this is a somewhat complicated discussion, due to two factors. First, the biblical text highlights that King David did not know Abishag. In 1 Kings 1:4, the biblical text says, "And the damsel was very fair and cherished the king and ministered to him. But the king knew her not." This expression, "the king knew her not," means that David did not possess Abishag as a woman. That is, he did not have relations with her. This information may favor the idea that inferring Abishag had become David's wife is not something indisputable. Therefore, it would not be completely impossible that Abishag never belonged to the group of David's women. On the other hand, secondly, the way Abishag was associated with Adonijah's death seems to indicate that, at least before the kingdom of Israel, Abishag really was considered David's wife or concubine, even though they did not have relations. For most scholars, this seems to be the most coherent conclusion. This is because when Bathsheba spoke to Solomon about Adonijah's request to marry Abishag, Solomon's response to his mother was as follows: "Why do you request Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Request for him the kingdom also, for he is mine elder brother, even for him and for Abiathar the priest, and for Joab the son of Zeruiah." Then King Solomon sware by the Lord, saying, "God do so to me, and more also, if Adonijah have not spoken this word against his own life. Now therefore, as the Lord liveth, which hath established me and set me on the throne of David my father, and who hath made me an house as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death this day." Notice that Adonijah's request to marry Abishag was received by Solomon as a direct threat to his place on the throne of Israel. Solomon's reaction can be explained because, at that time, when a man married a woman who had been part of a king's harem, this action was often interpreted as a claim to the throne. During Absalom's revolt, for example, the Bible says that he lay with David's women in the sight of all Israel, a clear demonstration of power and claim to the throne. So this seems to have been Solomon's understanding when he saw Adonijah's request as an internal conspiracy against his reign. That is, for him, authorizing Adonijah's marriage to Abishag implied giving up his kingdom in favor of his opponents. Solomon would hardly have had such a reaction if Abishag had been simply a nurse or caretaker of his father. Therefore, considering all this, most scholars believe that Abishag enjoyed the status of David's woman or concubine before the kingdom of Israel, although she never had relations with the king. After these events involving Adonijah's death, Abishag is no longer mentioned in the Bible. Now write in the comments if you already knew who Abishag was. And if you have not yet subscribed to our channel, please subscribe now.